Hello, everybody. This is Founder Leroon. I'm here with Fantasy Grounds College. Today, I'm going to be creating some content for the Ubershrike Arena, which is something I might run in the future where we will take 4 players and pit them against some hideous creatures and potentially against each other, but I would prefer teamwork. However, if it comes down to it, we may do that. But for the time being, I'm going to be creating some parcels to make character creation a little bit simpler when we are setting up our gladiator. So I need to make a base pack for each fighter type, and then I may make some adjustments or some things that would help with the character builds. So right now I'm creating content with the theme of gladiator in mind. I do have a lot of third-party content to help assist me in this. I might even have to develop some weapons myself. We'll have to see. But for the most part, let's take a look at what we have here. It looks like I have these 3 characters, and what that is are 3 starting characters that I'm going to use, or fighters. I'm going to build those. But I want to build some of the assets first. The assets are going to make the difference. So I want to make sure that I have the assets in place, so it's a lot easier in the future to build things. So it's much easier to do this before. That way you're not building it as you go. And that's a tip I'd give you if you're going to create anything. It's a lot easier to plan this out. So one of the plans I have is to build some of the parcels so it's easier to build characters with. So I'm going to have a base pack, and then from there will be some specific packs for different types of gladiator builds or different themes. So that's kind of what I'm going for. So one pack might have a shield and a spear, one might have a shield and an axe, so it just depends on how you want to do it. But for the most part, I'm going to say that it's good to have a variety of equipment available, and if you have them in packs, it'll make it a lot easier to run it. So that's basically what I'm going to cover today is let's build some packs together, and then what we'll do is we'll make it to where you can actually use the content as you're creating your character builds. The other thing is to make it simpler for anybody in the future that wants to create content, so they have a rough idea of how they should start. So I have 3 basic raw characters. I've already created the tokens, and I already have an idea of what I want to do with them. I will introduce you to these guys. These are going to be some of the main gladiators in this arena. So Krishar is like your simple kind of hoplite style, Greek, Roman kind of fighter, arena style, kind of your generic archetype of a type of fighter. He's very popular. He's got the all the crowd on his side. Bomb here was brought in as sort of a tough case. They brought him here to fight in the arena. He basically has to fight for his life to survive and get out. Now he is basically not wanting to be here by choice, so he's pretty much fighting for his life. And he is basically just a really tough brute kind of guy, almost like a barbarian. So I may kind of form him around that build. He doesn't use a lot of weapons or armor, so more than likely he's going to be a barbarian build. And then Mofatu is kind of a soldier of fortune. He'll pay to the highest bidder. He's trained. He's very crafty. He's intelligent. He's been in other arenas. He travels, he's a mercenary, so he has a lot of fighting practice and prowess. He's very cunning, he knows how to fight, but he's not necessarily an arena fighter, but he definitely does those types of things. Krishar, on the other hand, is definitely an arena fighter. Goes for the gusto, probably has a higher charisma, really tries to please the crowd, whereas Mofatu is more fighting for himself. He's trying to prove to himself that he's a good warrior. And Bomb is more of a protective kind of survivalist kind of guy. So you got 3 different people or 3 different characters that actually have some sort of background to them. Like Krishar is kind of like your well-liked local boy. Baum was brought in from the outside, and he's kind of forced to be here. Mofatu travels around, so he came here by choice. So he enters this contest with, with slaying other gladiators and fighting in mind. So there's your three different types. You have your local, you have your external brought in fighter, and then you have the guy who wants to be here. So there's three different ways to kind of tug at this, and I'm sure there's more that we'll discover as we build. But for the time being, I'm actually going to just take and build some gladiators, but I want to build some of the content so that I don't have to go back and fix that. So it's one of those things where, I want to show you how to use Fantasy Grounds, but at the same time, have a little fun while we're doing it. So that's the main thing. So that's just a thing I want to share with you, and it's really not a scripted show or anything like that. So pretty much anything goes. I just want to get back to showing people how to use the software and also create content at the same time. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. That's what I'm going for. So what's happening here is we have the Ubershrike Arena, and basically in my assets area, I have a couple maps that I have imported. These were created by Game Tile Warehouse, but Chris McDermott. We know him as Map Hatter in our community. These are arenas that are themed around different environments. So what I have here is some images in my assets area, and they're in my campaign folder. And then there are some arena stuff in here. So actually some maps. There's 7 of them total, and they're all themed. Like one is fire and lava, one is ice, one is like a labyrinth maze kind of thing. One is aquatic, which is interesting. One is kind of your generic Roman style. One is sort of like a swamp, kind of murky situation there. And the other is some sort of, let's see, what is this? This is a toxic variant, so it's very toxic and dangerous to fight here. So those are the variations. So I'm going to actually make a table for those in the future. And when the players come to the table, they're going to roll, and whatever arena comes up is where they're going to be fighting. So it's going to be interesting in that. And then when the players come, they can either select a character of their choice, or if they want to build something, I'm going to have some guidelines put in place. But basically, I'm not going to allow Unearthed Arcana. I will allow third-party content if I know what it is. And then, of course, all the core rules can be built in there. I'm going to potentially say you may want to build a fighter type or a martial type. So if you're going to play a bard, I would probably go with a College of Battle or College of Swords, whatever it's called. And then the other thing would be to come up with some kind of build that's going to be conducive to arena fighting. So we're going to take a look at building these characters and making sure that they fit in with the theme, but we're also going to build content that has to do with this specific arena. I don't know exactly how the rules are going to be for fighting because I don't want it to be too complex, but at the same time, I want it to be interesting. Chris has some really cool rules that we can use so that the fighters and the participants can influence the crowd, which will give them, bonuses and such. So there's a little bit of planning in the back end that needs to be done. But for the most part, the next few episodes that I do here, I'm going to be creating content for this particular setting or this particular game. It's not really going to be a campaign. I think it will be more like a sports arena type thing. This is inspired by other streams where they do player versus player or player versus everything or whatever. I'm going to try it. I really prefer if the players work together, but if worst comes to worst, or depending on the type of match, we might pit people against each other. But that adds a lot of extra time to the episode, so I have to measure that carefully. The other thing is trying to make it fair, and it's very unbalanced a lot of times. So unless you're very cunning or the dice are in your favor, some character builds might get just squashed. So we'll have to see what happens. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and start building, and hopefully you guys can follow along and participate. Give me a little feedback once in a while. I don't expect you to come up with everything, but if you have something specific that you want me to build, I can, as far as content goes. Right now, we are going to be focusing in on mainly the packs that you can give out to the standard gladiator. And then from there, they can be customized with weapons. But I want each gladiator to have at least a starting kit. So it'd be like a loincloth and a leather armor, maybe some bands, a helmet, those sort of things are what I'm looking at. I'm also going to theme them for things such as having that so that the people can customize the way they look a little bit. So they can have a helm, or they can wear furs, or those sort of things. So there's going to be kits that allow for them to embrace their theme for their character, but also things that allow you to customize for the fighting style you have and also your background. So there's going to be some things in there that I think will be interesting. And when people bring in their characters, they'll have to basically have no gear, and they'll have to select whatever gear is offered to them from the arenas. And that might vary from arena to arena. So I have to look into how complex that might be. But I don't want to make it too complex, because then you're going to be spending time on rules and trying to figure out who does what when, and all that kind of stuff is really what slows things down. So to make things a little bit more efficient and not slow things down, I'm going to build some of the parcels that are going to be used in the character builds. So I want to start with a base parcel. This is something that we give every gladiator when they enter the arena. So it's probably going to be like a dagger, leather armor, and some sort of, accoutrements instead of just nothing at all. So I'm going to take some equipment and build a parcel, and once the parcel's done, then I can apply those to these characters for their equipment. And in some cases, you may or may not want to use the content depending on what your character build is, but at least you'll have a starting point. And what I was thinking about is, if a gladiator is successful, I think they might be able to upgrade their equipment a little bit. So every tier that they go up, they get to upgrade their equipment. I'm thinking that might be a thing. I don't know yet. But also, we're going to rely on the rolling system. So there's really not going to be a set number, or they have to go with the standard array to make things more even. So I'll have to figure out how that's going to work. But for right now, I'm going to be building the assets for this particular setting, or this arena module. So right now I'm in parcels, And I made a new group called Gladiatorial Gear Packs, and that's basically what this is. So you have the melee fighter, and then we're going to make one called ranged fighter. And then I'm thinking maybe one other. Maybe a finesse fighter, something like that. So as long as we have these packs, we can kind of customize these. So maybe a finesse fighter. I would say a martial or a hand-to-hand fighter. Like a monk, maybe? And then I probably will have like a spellcasting one just in case. Anybody that's crazy enough put a spellcaster in there, they're going to have an opportunity to win or to participate. So what I might do is create a couple spellcaster packs. So this would be like, let's go with the Warcaster or war-based mage or wizard or whatever you want to call it. And then we'll have one that's the assistant or the healer type. Or perhaps the buffing. So we might want to call it something else, not a healer, because maybe it's the medic build. I don't know, but it needs to be more of an assistant type thing. So maybe I'll say assistant fighter. Or assistant caster, excuse me. Actually support. Then the other will be a... So we have a Warcaster, a support caster, and then we'll have a... I don't know, a controller. Alright, so we have control caster, support caster, and Warcaster. So you got a few different categories, and that'll change what equipment they have. You have the hand-to-hand fighter, the finesse fighter, melee fighter, and a ranged fighter. And then I'm going to have another one that's like a brute or something like that. So we'll see how these come out. But these are just ideas that I have for right now. And what this does is it themes the equipment to that specific type of build. So doesn't matter what race you are necessarily, but it does affect your gear and your equipment. So a ranged fighter will definitely have lighter equipment. A melee fighter might have like studded leather instead of regular leather, or maybe padded or something like that. And the casters at the best would have like padded or no armor at all, and they would rely on their stealth and such, or maybe they'll have leather at the most. So it depends on the type of caster they are. But I would think that spell casting would be difficult to pull off in this particular case. So I'm not going to discourage it. And I think it could be effective if used wisely and if you choose the right spells to bring in with you. But for the most part, I don't see it being very conducive to playing online like this in an arena. However, you know, spellcasters can do a lot of damage, especially when they get higher tiered, so we'll see what happens. But mainly, the type of builds I'd be looking for are like barbarians, rangers, fighters, maybe the College of Swords or the College of Combat or whatever you want to call it. Something that's more geared towards fighting. And then, of course, the spellcasting would be like a war priest or a battle mage or maybe a a martial monk that kicks butt. So sort of some of those things might work better for this type of setup situation. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start building these parcels. I think there needs to be a base of some sort. So I think I want to generate a base if needed. And I think that would be wise to have a base and not just a, like a boring build or anything like that. So we'll see. It just depends on, what you guys want and also what we come up with. So let's go ahead and start building this content. So I've already got kind of some categories here, and now I want to make the base category. We'll just call it the Gladiator's Pack. It's just going to be very basic. And then when you pick a specific build, you can also grab this other equipment. So at the least, I need to have some sort of weapon that each player can have. So there's Gladiator Basic, there'll be a Gladiator like Experienced, and then there'll be like a Gladiator Champion type pack. So we'll see how, and that's just a really generic thing, not as specific. So let's do that. So I think the basic, you're going to have a dagger. I mean, come on, you need a dagger. I don't care what class you are, everyone needs some kind of knife. So let's go ahead and go to the items. And let's take a look at daggers. Alright, so there's some interesting things. I have an equipment thing here, but there's a parrying dagger, which might be something that someone would use later. There's throwing daggers, and then you have a wrist dagger. You have a dagger gun, and then there's a chain and dagger. So I think initially it's just going to be a regular dagger. So I'm going to drag that to the parcel. I don't think I want to add armor because I believe that depending on your build, that's what's going to create your desire to pick one of the other packs. So you're going to get more than one pack. So these are just kind of a basic pack that you're going to get as a gladiator to defend yourself. And some of it isn't going to be weapons either. It's just going to be aesthetics. So we have some clothing. So I think as a adventurer or as somebody that's in the arena, some common clothes. That's pretty basic. So that's like your loincloth and maybe a tapestry or a shirt or something like that. Whatever it is that you are going to use to cover yourself. That's going to be your basic stuff here. And there's other clothing types, but I think for the time being, we're just going to have the basic clothes. Now, everybody wants to have some sort of defense, and I think that I want to refrain from that because when people come into the arena, they may or may not use that equipment. So I don't want them to go into the arena with a bunch of stuff that they don't need. So that's something I want to kind of steer away from. Let's see. The next thing is let's start building. We're going to add a couple more things. So I'm going to give this guy 1 copper piece. And I think I'm doing that for more story or background. Or maybe they'll actually use it in combat. Who knows? But I like having that extra little bit of stuff in there. Like each person goes in there with a coin. They can probably throw the coin or they can use it to jam something up or whatever. I'm just going to give them 1 coin to work with. And it's a copper piece. It's not really worth a lot, but it may be something utility that they would use in this particular setting. The next most universal weapon would be a spear. But again, the spellcasters may not be able to use that. So don't want to put that in these basic equipment. I think I'm going to look at boots. Sandals. Nope. Nothing like that. That's all going to be included in your clothing. I think everyone should have some sort of blunt object, maybe a club, or I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be yet, but it should be something that they can use either to defend themselves or to use as a tool. And I think a quarterstaff or some wood or maybe one torch or something like that might be something that they would use. So there's some wood here. There's a wooden stake. I think that would kind of work like a dagger, so it may not be something that we would use. But there is a wooden round shield, and I think that is a good starting piece of equipment. But there again, it would be something that you may or may not use depending on what your character is going to be doing. So I think we're close to the end actually of the Gladiator's pack, the basic. So you're going to get some clothes and a dagger. That's it. And one coin that you got hidden somewhere, either in or on your body. And then the rest of the stuff that we're going to bank is going to have to be more advanced and a lot more geared towards certain builds. So I think this is good for just a basic Gladiator pack. This is what most people will get when they first start. They get some clothing, they get a dagger, they get one copper piece, and I'm thinking they might get a band or a manacle. So this would be a wrist object, and it would be something that they have to either remind them of where they came from, or it's part of their security slash kind of a way to keep them from breaking things and fighting each other. So it's like a manacle or something. So here's some manacles here, and basically they are on your wrists, and they may have a broken chain on it, or in this case no chain because it would be considered a weapon. But they do bind people, so there's a hook on them, and if you used effectively, you might be able to add an extra point of damage or something like that. But for the most part, it's just more aesthetics than it is mechanical. So we'll put a manacle on there just in case for, depending on the scenario. And then maybe a cape or a robe. So this would be like a robe or maybe a cloak. So there's a beast hide cloak. That's not bad. That's kind of makes sense. So it can be really thin, or it can be furry and woolly. I guess it's more for looks than anything. But it could also be like something that's decorated, colored, dyed, whatever. It's just for flavor. So everyone enters the arena with a cloak, but they don't necessarily have to wear it. But I'll give them a cloak just so they can protect themselves from the sun or the elements. And then they have their regular, their minimal clothing that they wear, and then your dagger, and of course, manacles. So this might be a basic pack that you would give a basic fighter that doesn't have any clout, doesn't have any influence, doesn't have a lot of money, and this would just be the starting equipment. So it wouldn't be anything that you would use on a constant basis, just what you would start with. So I think this is good for the basic pack. And then you're going to be upgraded at this point. And it will usually add or substitute. So depending on what you choose. So in this, instead of recreating this, I can make a copy of this and then I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to go to Parcels. And while I'm in this group, there is the Gladiator's basic pack. So I just drag and drop that back in there. I'm going to open it up. And then I'm going to call this, instead of a basic, it's going to be called experienced, I guess. So it contains all the stuff from before, except for now it might have a leather component or some sort of pouch or whatever. But whatever it is, it's going to be a little bit better than this, the basics. So you're still going to get the coin. You'll get the cloak, common clothing, a dagger, and manacles. So I think the next thing would be to start looking at maybe giving them some leather armor. So this would not be something you would probably give a spellcaster, but could be something you would give one of your more experienced fighters. So if they come in there at like 4th level to 7, you might give them this instead of the basic one. So I'm just going to make some options here. And maybe instead of 1 copper, you're going to have 2. So that's not a big change, but it may change something in the fight, so you never know. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the extra items that are going to be needed. So in this case, you're going to get leather. So here's some leather. So that would automatically equip when you add it to your character sheet if it doesn't already have armor. And then you probably will have access to a shield or a spear or something like that. So we'll leave that for more of the specifics. But I think for now, just the defensive things, having the leather armor, and let me look at the boots again. Alright, so the clothes might be a traveler's clothing or an adventurer's clothing, something like that, or maybe the clothing with the dark hood would go with another build. But I don't want to get too direct because then you leave out the things for the other classes. So I think I'm going to leave common clothes, but as you get up in level, you might get fine clothing, or you might get camouflage or cold weather clothing, or maybe even some of this other cool stuff. So it just depends on the build. But basically, all you're gaining is an extra coin and leather armor. And maybe instead of 1 dagger, you're going to get 2. So now you have the option to throw 1, or to keep 1 to protect yourself, or both. So it just depends. So you're going to get 2 daggers instead, and you're going to get leather armor, and you're going to get these manacles, just like some of the things you would get at the lower level. So that's more of an experience pack. So this is based off of tiers or levels. So if you're a level 3 character, we're going to give you this pack instead of the basic. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is build these little packs. So when you add them to the characters, they're ready to go. You don't have to mess around. Okay, so I'm going to make another copy. So this is going to be a Gladiator's pack again, but it's going to be a little bit more advanced. So what we'll have here is this copy. I'm going to rename it. So this would be Champion instead of Experienced. Or you can say Hero or whatever. So he's going to get 3 copper. He's still going to have 2 daggers. And instead of leather, he'll have studded leather. So I need to grab studded leather. It's a little bit better armor. It's not much better, but a little bit. And there's other things you can do with studded leather too, as far as tactics go. So I want to go ahead and grab this leather. So I'm looking for studded. There we go, studded leather instead of the regular leather. And then for clothing, instead of having this regular clothing, there's going to be a costume. So a costume, which would be basically like your calling card, or like a wrestler has, you know, different types of clothing. It depends on what you want to build. So that's that. So that's kind of like your basic parcels that you can drag to the character sheets. So when you're done with these, all you have to do is you can share that section, or you can share this group of things with your group, your party members, and then they can pick whatever pack is suitable for their character. Of course, you know, they're going to go for something bigger, but you have to be there to intervene. So when you build the characters ahead of time, they already have the equipment. But when someone brings a character in, they basically do not have any sort of, you know, they don't have any equipment. So that's why we're building these different packs. That way it makes it quicker. And yes, we can swap out a weapon or two, or swap out armor like for like. But, you know, it just depends on the situation. So now what we have is a pack here that's going to be for the champion builds, which is going to be levels 8 and up. And these are the starting equipment that you're going to get. So you're going to get a costume instead of regular clothing. You're going to get 1 extra copper piece, and you get studded leather, and you're going to get 1 more dagger. So now you're up to 3 daggers. So that's your Gladiator pack. And the one other thing that you might get is I want to say a trinket. So let's do that. So let's open up the trinkets. I think we have those. Yep. So we're going to go to items. And this is in the Rob 2e stuff. So there's equipment that's actually trinkets. So I want to go to my library and modules. I'm going to load this trinket table. So what this does is it adds more stuff to the items, and it has a lot, if not all, the trinkets that come from the player's handbook. And I'm only going to have select ones, so it's not really going to be anything specifically powerful. But I want to use them for ideas that I might have or that I might want to use. So if I go to library, okay, so here's the items. And what they are basically just different equipment that you can use, or different things we can add. So there might be something that I would prefer to use in this build that's really nothing important. It's more role play. So I think like a scrap of cloth from an old banner, something like that. So all that does is it's like it just fuels role playing, and being that you're a champion, you might have this in your hand. I don't know if you guys seen Russell Crowe's Gladiator, but he had that little piece of fabric from his wife that was what was killed in the movie. So it'd be something like that, or maybe it's commemorative of someone that you took out, or maybe it represents something from your homeland, whatever. But all it is a role play opportunity, and it doesn't even have any sort of text here. It's just a scrap. So what we'll do is when we build the characters, everyone will make a story for their scrap of cloth. And it's not going to really do anything mechanically, but it gives you a little bit more background to chew on. And that's really what makes a gladiator, is not just their fighting and where they come from, but also the motivation and what they're doing. So that is basically how we're going to have this pack set up for the champion. So now you have all this sorts of things that you can pick from. And now let's go to a Finesse Fighter. So a Finesse Fighter is more than likely going to have some really lower powered items. So minus the dagger, they would probably have some sort of poking stick. So either a spear, which is probably not their style, or a rapier. So here's a rapier. So this is a finesse fighter. So definitely a rapier. Leather armor. And actually they get leather, so we don't have to add that. But if they want to substitute out, I think leather, we'll just put that in there. And then if they get 2 sets of armor, we can just delete it. But I think most of our base already have leather, so we don't have to add the armor. So that's handy. So if we have the base parcel, let's see, let's take a look at the basic. Yeah, so the basic doesn't give you any armor. Oh, okay. That may be a problem. So we will add the armor at some of these levels here. So a finesse fighter, if they don't already have the, a proficiency in light armor, then we would just give them the gladiator's pack. But if they're proficient with light armor and they're a finesse fighter, then we'll give them the leather anyways. So that's what we'll do. So they get leather, they get a rapier, and potentially some other stuff, like maybe something they can throw. So some throwing daggers. There's some stone throwing, or stoners throwing stone, and then there's a rectangle metal device with 2 tiny. Yeah, that's something else. So we got some throwing daggers. So these can only be thrown. So that's a rapier, 3 throwing daggers, and they're going to have a regular dagger too in their pack. So I think we're good there. And then we could take the leather out because you get that as you go up. So maybe we don't even need to add this. So we just have a rapier, 3 throwing daggers. Maybe, what else would you use for finesse? There's short blade, so we can put a short sword in there. And maybe one other item, but I think that's pretty good for finesse fighter. And then they would get another copper piece. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to add to a finesse fighter. Because you have the stabbing rapier, you have the short blade in case you want to, do slashing damage too. And then you have your, or actually this is just poking damage too, but then you have your throwing daggers too in case you need to get at somebody that's further away. So that's basically what you have there, is this finesse fighter. And I'm thinking I'm on the basic fighter, like the, where is that? The gladiator pack. I might add a sling, since that's really basic. I think that's a good idea to have at least one thing that they can use. But then it also implies they have rocks and a pouch, so I don't know. Maybe I'll upgrade the experienced gladiator with that. But so he doesn't have any weapons. But see, now we're getting into the point where it will mess with the specifics that we want to provide with each one of these. So I'll just leave it at that. So a finesse fighter gets the throwing daggers, short sword, and a rapier, and they have to pick between those. So I'll just put them on there, and whatever one they don't pick, we'll delete it. If they pick short blade, though, they might be able to use 2 of them. So that's another thing. So if they don't use both weapons, perhaps they can substitute out or double up on one of these. So we can be flexible like that. So I'm trying to think in terms of when you build your character, what is the least and most likely things that you would want to have when you're actually doing it. So we'll see. And this is subject to change. So we're not necessarily going to have, every single character is going to be perfect. But I want to have these basic packs in place before we start using this content. Now, the next thing is the control caster. So all spellcasters should probably have a base pack. I don't have one necessarily for them, so the Warcaster itself will give you some things that may or may not help you with combat. It may just be your spell components, spell focus, maybe a cloak or something like that. We'll see. So I don't know what I'm going to put for those yet, but I know that a control caster is trying to control the battlefield. So I think I'm going to give them some options for weapons that they can take or not. And I think most of them are going to have to be ranged or close range. So I'm going to go ahead and give the control caster a sling. So here's the sling. We have to give them some bullets. So sling bullets, there's one with 20 and one with 10. So we're going to give them the 10. And then they're going to need a pouch. And this is an ammunition pouch. Or it can be they're going to need a component pouch and an ammunition pouch. So I think the ammo pouch is just to hold the sling bullets. And they can also pick up rocks off the arena if there is any. And then you have your component pouch, which is going to be their spell focus. So that's basically what a control caster will get. And then maybe, because they're already going to have a dagger, and they have these, these range things that they can do, and they're going to be buffing or debuffing. So I might give them a chance or an opportunity to have darts. So they're going to have darts, and I think for the time being, I think 6 darts is adequate, so you can throw those. And then you're going to have your different things. Now, just remember that when you build your character, you're going to have a main weapon, so all this other stuff is mostly just filler. So if you pick a control caster, this is the additional stuff you're going to get on top of the basic gladiator or whatever level that you're at. So this is a good thing for spellcasters to have some variety here, and then they have the components. And I think the next thing I would give the control caster is maybe a blowgun. So here's the blowgun, and I'm going to put that on the sheet, and then you need the needles. So there you go. So that's the arsenal of a control caster, but this could also be very close to, and then you get 1 copper too. So you would get basically all this gear, and then you would mix and match whatever ones you want to use. So you'd get 1 melee, 1 ranged weapon, and then ammunition if required. And then the next thing would be, like, if I want to use the same template for like the other casters, I can. I'm going to try to customize it to where they're a little different. So we have a support caster, which is pretty much like a control caster, except for they do more healing and that sort of thing. And these guys just kind of control and debuff and summon and that sort of thing. So the support caster is going to get all of this stuff, I think, or some of it. So they're going to get the ammunition pouch. They're going to get the sling. They will get the component pouch. And they'll get the bullets. But they're not going to get the blowgun. They might have darts, but I think I'm going to reserve that. So they're going to have a little bit different, and you're going to get 1 copper out of that. And then there's going to be some other things that I want to add. So they're going to have a medicine kit, I believe, or some kind of herbal kit. Let's see, there's an antidote, disguise kit, a poisoner's kit, so that may be a thing for a different build, a herbalism kit, and a healer's kit. So they're going to have a healer's kit. So that's a benefit of being a support caster, is that you're going to have access to the healer's kit. Now this would be if you're helping someone in the arena, you have a pouch, and you just pull out some stuff to stop the bleeding, and maybe help close the wound, maybe you throw a little dirt on it, whatever it takes to clog the blood. And that would be basically what the support caster gets. So it's kind of like a healer / helper type thing. So that's basically that, and then I don't think they're going to get darts, or the blowgun. I think they need one more thing though. So I don't know. Let's see. I think I want to get them some sort of gear, something a little bit more protective. So they have to defend themselves. So maybe they get, but we don't want to add armor because that comes in with class and such. So maybe they get a helmet, or no, not a helmet. Let's see. So they get ammunition, bullets, component pouch, healer's kit, sling, and maybe a small shield of some sort. That might be. Yeah, that's kind of more or less. Yeah, we'll give them a shield. Bye, babe. Okay, I think a club would be good. So that way, if they get attacked, they can protect themselves more. And then also the next best thing is a staff. Yeah, I think a staff would be good too. It's going to be a bow staff. So the bow staff is more protective. Alright, so these are some choices for the healer supporter type role. And then we have the Warcaster. So I'm going to give them the quarterstaff. You're going to get the darts. I don't think they need the blowgun. They're going to get their component pouch. And ammunition pouch. And I think I'm going to give them something else, like armor-wise, maybe. No, they're pretty much just martial. So definitely going to give them a sling if they need it. The bullets. But no blowgun. And I'm going to give them more darts. So they're going to have 12 darts instead. And sling bullets will be 20. So they're going to have a little bit more ammo. They might get the wooden buckler, depending on if they're a sorcerer or something like that, or maybe a multi-classed. So we'll just give them that in case they can get rid of it if they're not going to use it or if they're not proficient. And they're going to get their 1 copper. So that is basically the build or the type of equipment to give just the raw basic stuff. And then we'd have to go into all the fighter builds and give them like a hand-to-hand. You know, what do you give them? You give them a club, maybe a mace, something like that. Once you have all your basics and your equipment, then you can start customizing the characters as you build them. So we can test some of this equipment out. So before I go much further, I'm going to go with a melee fighter. And we're going to give them their 1 copper. They're going to get a... what do you call it? Probably a club or a mace, so probably a mace. There we go. They're going to get studded leather. They're going to get a shield. So we're going to give him a spear. So we drag that on here. And that's pretty good. That's a pretty good starting equipment and maybe a club. We can make it a great club, so it's a lot more powerful. It's more of a two-handed thing, so instead of a regular club. So a great club might be something they'd use. And then, of course, you know, they're going to probably pick a sword or whatever they want. But this is just to give them a base, so I'm going to take away the war club and replace it with just a club. They can upgrade or whatever they need to do, but this is just to give them an idea of what's available to them. Alright. So I'm going to try one out on Bomb here, or I think this melee fighter would be more like Krishar, maybe. So let's see what Krishar, what it does for them. So I'm going to go to their inventory. Okay, so he's going to get the... Krishar is not a new fighter. So he's usually a mid-level at least, so I'm going to give him the experience pack. I'm gonna fix the weight on. I'm gonna fix the weight on the cloak. Should be at least 1 pound. And then let's give him the melee fighter stuff. So he has a variety here of different things. So I thought I gave him, yeah, here's studded. So we can just delete the leather. Does he want the mace? No. Does he want the daggers? Yes. That was... So there's the club. We don't need that. Gonna keep his 2 daggers. Shield, spear, studded leather. 2 daggers, common clothing, and a B-side cloak. So that's just really the start of it. And then he might have an exotic weapon that he fights with. Being that he's higher level, we might give him a shot at grabbing something a little bit more themed for his build. But for right now, he just has the basic stuff. When we go to his actions tab, he's got 2 daggers and a spear. So you always want to make sure that you have that. So now you can kind of build whatever kind of character you want around this. I think this guy has more qualities of a champion or whoever calls the shots kind of guy. So I'd probably make him like a commander type background or some sort of military thing where he's had that training. So he might have the soldier background or something like that. I don't think he has the gladiator background. I think if anything, Bomb or Mofatsu might. Krishar has more of a commanding presence, so he would probably have a military background, even though he's one of the main fighters in the arena. Yep, that's right, Shell. I'm getting ready to wrap it up because I got to make dinner. So, anyways, so basically, I'm gonna continue building the parcels and fleshing them out and balancing them and seeing what works and what sounds stupid and that sort of thing. I think it's easier to add all the equipment and then take away any excess or double than not have it. So when you drag something over, it automatically adds most of the stuff, and then anything you want to customize or swap out, you can just right click and delete it. If you have to keep going to the items list and picking stuff out, that just takes forever. So they're going to have a main weapon, and all this stuff here is tertiary. So he has a spear. That might be his main weapon, but if it isn't, since he's mid-level, he'll be given a chance to, and he's a hero, basically, so he can get a sword or a long sword or a two-handed weapon. So it just depends, and he's a melee fighter, so he gets that option to pick a weapon. But that's all he should probably get, and then if he's worth his weight in salt, he can upgrade his armor. So it depends on how many fights he was in. It depends on what type of fighter he is, but I think he'd have more than just studded leather. He'd probably have like ringmail or something like that to make himself look more, or chainmail or something like that, so make himself look tougher. The only problem with wearing heavy armor is exhaustion. So that's one of the things I'm going to enforce. So the more heavy your armor, the more exhaustion you're going to suffer from. So that's going to be a thing in the arena. Sometimes, though, if you play to the crowd and you're charismatic or you're clever, you may be able to offset that by having some sort of rapport with the crowd. And that usually gives you advantage or disadvantage, depending on what's going on. But I think having the exhaustion rule for heavy armor is great. So medium armor is about the heaviest you can go for the arena. But if you go with plate or something like that, you're going to be cooking inside that thing, or you're going to be freezing or whatever. So it's going to give you problems because it's heavy. And even though you have the strength to wear it, it's very bulky. It's time consuming to take it on or off. And I would only use it during a big battle. I don't think I would have it on every fight. So it's okay if gladiators have a couple different sets of armor, they just can't equip it, and you'd probably not want to have it on the sheet for weight purposes. So there's that too. So we'll see. But for the most part, that's what I'm working on, is just the parcels right now for the characters. And I tested one out on Krishar here, and he's got it's a beast hide cloak, got some common clothing, 2 daggers, the manacles around his wrists to designate that he's part of the arena. It's kind of like a calling card. And then the shield, which would probably have his logo or something on it, or maybe it's all bashed up from all his battles. You have your spear, which is the most versatile weapon, because you can use it, you can throw it, you can jab with it, or you can use it two-handedly. So the spear is really a very effective arena weapon. And then he has studded leather. So with just his basic stats, he gets a 12 AC. So I haven't even rolled his stats yet. So I might do that in the next episode, but I want to build all the content first and then build the characters. Because if you're doing it as you go, it takes too long. So right now I just have the tokens that I've already made with the roll advantage token stamp. And then I have the arena assets, which are basically just things that go to the arena. So as far as images go, in the campaign folder, I have an arena assets pack that Chris put out, and these are just things to decorate the arena. So there's bloody bodies and broken swords and pools of blood and random shields and weapons and such, and some manacles and some little pieces of weapons, and maybe someone throws a weapon down at you, whatever. And then at the campaign level, I also have the Meanders map. So there's 7 arenas. I think we're going to roll a d6, and if they don't, if they don't like whatever's rolled, I might give them a chance to just use a standard arena. I have to figure out how I'm going to do it, but it's going to be a dice roll. And what I'm going to say probably is, since it's an uneven number, we'll just put a 1d7 and they'll roll. So you can do that in Fantasy Grounds. You just won't get the dice roll. You'll get the mechanic part of it, but you won't get the physical dice to roll, because there's no such thing as a 7-sided dice. And then for the campaign folder, I also have some vectors here that will be used for decorational purposes. These are kind of torture-like looking stuff. They can be props. You can use them for decorating your maps in case you want to use some of the stuff. I don't think it will be used very often, but it's something that's interesting. Maybe after or before an adventure, you might have something like that on the side. I don't think I'd get too deep into that. And then the Ubershrike handouts are basically... there's an awarding inspiration thing, a mechanic that Chris put out that's pretty interesting. If you earn 3 inspiration points, you become the crowd favorite. You'll be showered with applause, glory, and possibly some very deadly weapons as a random item, and it's thrown to you to aid in your fight. So that's a kind of a cool thing. So you have to roll a natural 20. You have to succeed in unlikely outcomes, that sort of thing. So these are the sorts of things to do it with. And then the DC challenge rating normally is about a 14. So it's charisma or persuasion, and it requires a description of your attempt as you try to do your action. So you can't just say, I'm going to use persuasion. You have to actually explain it and tell us what it looks like. You can attempt stunts and that kind of thing. So that's kind of what you want to do for the flavor and the fun of it. Spectacle of it, showmanship. And then he has an Ubershrike prize set up here for anyone that plays in the arena. It just gives you like an overview to bring your players here. If you prove yourself, your daily prize is 1,500 gold, and it tells you roughly where it is, and it says entry-level combatants should apply to the training ground. So if you're first level, they're going to train you a little bit. And then we have a Entryway Banner, which is just more or less it's basically when you enter the arena, that's what you're going to see. And it's basically telling you this way or this way to the Ubershrike or to the ring. So it just depends on what level you are. You're going to make that choice. And then for the actual region, Chris has a regional map that you can use, or you can set it in any setting you want. But the Ubershrike is here, and then you have these little town areas, so you have all the wildlands, and you have some mountains, which looks like most of these places are up in the mountains. And then, of course, I made an ad for the Ubershrike. So there's like a little background image for the ads. There's the other social media ad, so it's just up to you. So if I set this to the background decal, that's what I get. So this is what I used on the social media to advertise. So this shows you the arenas and some of the warriors, and then it just gives you a little bit of flavor of the arena itself. So that's basically what we're going to be doing in these episodes, is to show you how to use Fantasy Grounds a little bit, but also show you how to think and be creative and, you know, come up with content that's interesting, not just build a character and then move on to the next character. I mean, I want all these characters to have a little bit of background to it. They also are going to have motivation, and they're all going to have a little bit of a backstory. Like I was saying, Baum was brought here. He wasn't here. He was forced to come here. Krishar was born in this area. He was a soldier. When he got out of the military, he came and worked in the arena. So he was basically kind of indoctrined, or he was influenced to come here. And Ofatu actually travels from city to city, and when he needs money or things like the information or whatever, he'll fight in the arena. So that's all I have for right now. I think I've been rambling enough, so I will talk to you guys next time, and hopefully we'll get some more characters going. I'm going to roll up the stats, start building characters. So I just wanted to give you a little preview of what I'm working on, and I'll talk to you guys on the next